In the heart of a small, forgotten town, nestled between looming forests and murky lakes, stood an old high school. The school, known as Ravenwood High, had a dark history shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of horror. Legends spoke of restless spirits haunting its corridors, of strange disappearances, and of a curse that plagued those who dared to explore its depths. One chilly autumn evening, a group of curious teenagers gathered around a crackling bonfire, eager to share their own experiences with Ravenwood High. Among them was Sarah, a fearless thrill-seeker with a passion for the supernatural, and her friends Alex, Emily, and Mark. As the fire crackled and cast eerie shadows on the faces of the group, Sarah began to recount the legend of Ravenwood High. It all started decades ago, Sarah began, her voice barely above a whisper, when the school was first built on ancient burial grounds. The spirits of the restless souls buried beneath the earth were disturbed, and they cursed the school and all who entered its doors. Emily shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. But why would anyone build a school on burial grounds? Legend says they didn't know, Sarah replied, her eyes gleaming with excitement. But the curse soon made itself known. Students began to disappear without a trace, and strange occurrences plagued the halls of Ravenwood High. Mark scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Come on, Sarah, you can't seriously believe all that nonsense." Sarah shot him a look, her expression serious. "I've heard enough stories to know there's something unnatural about that school, and I'm determined to find out the truth." With that, Sarah stood up, her friends exchanging nervous glances as they followed her lead. Together, they made their way through the darkened streets towards Ravenwood High, their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The old school loomed before them, its windows dark and foreboding against the night sky. As they approached, Sarah led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon of light. The front doors creaked open with a loud groan, echoing through the empty halls as the group stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and decay, and a chill ran down their spines as they ventured further into the depths of the school. "Stay close," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their footsteps. "We don't know what might be lurking in the shadows." The group moved cautiously through the hallways, their senses on high alert as they searched for any sign of the supernatural. Suddenly, Emily let out a gasp as she stumbled upon something lying on the floor. "What is it?" Alex asked, rushing to her side. Emily held up a faded photograph, her hands trembling as she stared at the image. It was a group photo of students from decades past, their faces frozen in time as they smiled for the camera. But as Emily looked closer, she noticed something chilling about the photo. Each student had hollow, vacant eyes, as if their souls had been drained from their bodies. Mark took the photo from her hands, his brow furrowed in concern. "This place just keeps getting creepier." But Sarah's eyes were fixed on something else, a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar and beckoning them forward. Without a word, she pushed it open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. "Are we really going down there?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Sarah nodded, her determination unwavering. "We have to find out what happened here. We owe it to those who never got the chance to leave Ravenwood High." With that, she took the lead once more, descending into the abyss with her friends close behind. As they descended deeper into the bowels of the school, the air grew colder and the darkness more oppressive. Strange whispers echoed through the halls, sending shivers down their spines as they pressed on. Suddenly, they came upon a large, cavernous room filled with rows of dusty old lockers. Sarah's flashlight swept across the room, illuminating the faded graffiti scrawled across the walls. "Look!" Alex whispered, pointing to a message written in bold, jagged letters. "Beware the curse of Ravenwood High." Sarah's heart raced as she read the words, her mind racing with thoughts of the horrors that lay ahead. But before she could speak, a sudden noise echoed through the room, the sound of footsteps approaching from the darkness. Panic set in as the group searched frantically for a place to hide, ducking behind rows of lockers as the footsteps drew closer. Sarah held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for whatever lurked in the shadows to reveal itself. But to her surprise, it was not a ghost or a demon that emerged from the darkness. It was Mr. Thompson, the school janitor. "What are you kids doing down here?" he asked, his voice gruff with suspicion. Sarah hesitated, unsure of how to respond. But before she could speak, Mr. Thompson's expression softened, his eyes filled with a haunted sadness. "I know what you're looking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you need to leave this place. It's not safe here. Not for you, not for anyone." Sarah's curiosity got the better of her, and she pressed him for answers. "What happened here, Mr. Thompson? What is the curse of Ravenwood High?" Mr. Thompson sighed, his gaze distant as he recounted the tragic events that had unfolded within the school's walls. "It started with the construction of the school," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. "They didn't know it at the time, but they built Ravenwood High on top of an ancient burial ground, a resting place for the souls of the damned." As he spoke, images flashed before Sarah's eyes, images of students disappearing without a trace, of whispers in the night, and of a darkness that consumed everything it touched. "The curse of Ravenwood High is real," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice filled with a sense of dread, "and it will never let go of those who dare to enter its domain." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Sarah and her friends alone in the darkness once more. Despite Mr. Thompson's warnings, Sarah's determination to uncover the truth only grew stronger. With each step she took, she felt the weight of the curse pressing down upon her, urging her to turn back before it was too late. But she refused to be intimidated by the darkness that surrounded her. She had come too far to let fear hold her back now. As they continued to explore the depths of Ravenwood High, strange things began to happen. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, whispers echoed through the halls, and the air grew thick with a sense of malevolence that sent chills down their spines. "We need to get out of here," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with fear. But Sarah shook her head, her eyes blazing with determination. "No, we need to confront the darkness head-on. We need to find out what happened here." Millwood High School was like any other high school in the small town of Crestwood. Nestled among the trees, its red brick walls stood tall against the backdrop of the rolling hills that surrounded it. But there was something about Millwood that set it apart from other schools. It had a reputation for being haunted. Sarah was the new girl at Millwood High. She had moved to Crestwood with her family just a few weeks ago, and she was still trying to adjust to her new surroundings. As she walked through the school halls on her first day, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the place. It was as if the very air was charged with an eerie energy, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine. She tried to brush off the feeling as she made her way to her first class, but as she sat at her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Glancing around the room, she noticed that the other students seemed to be acting strangely too, whispering to each other and casting nervous glances over their shoulders. As the day went on, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong at Millwood High, and as the final bell rang and she made her way out of the school, she couldn't help but wonder what secrets the old building held. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the strange occurrences she had witnessed at school. Eventually, she gave up on sleep altogether and decided to do some research. As she delved into the history of Millwood High, Sarah discovered a chilling legend that had been passed down through generations of students. According to the legend, the school was built on the site of an old cemetery, and the restless spirits of the dead still roamed the halls to this day. Sarah shuddered as she read accounts of students who had reported seeing strange apparitions, hearing disembodied voices, and experiencing unexplainable phenomena. It seemed that Millwood High was indeed haunted, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of dread wash over her. But despite her fear, Sarah was determined to uncover the truth behind the legend of Millwood. Armed with her newfound knowledge, she set out to explore the school and unravel the mysteries that lay within its walls. Sarah's investigations led her to the abandoned wing of the school, the part of the building that had been closed off to students for years. As she made her way through the dusty corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the curtains set her heart racing, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creeping over her. Suddenly, Sarah heard a faint whispering coming from the darkness ahead. She froze in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat as she strained to listen. The whispering grew louder, and Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine as she realized that she was not alone. With trembling hands, Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the corridor ahead. And there, standing in the shadows, she saw it, a ghostly figure, its eyes hollow and empty, staring straight at her. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized that she was face to face with one of the spirits that haunted Millwood High. She wanted to scream, to run away as fast as she could, but something held her rooted to the spot as the ghostly figure floated towards her, its ethereal form shimmering in the dim light. As the ghostly figure drew closer, Sarah could see that it was not alone. More spirits emerged from the shadows, their twisted forms contorted in agony as they reached out towards her with bony hands. Sarah felt a wave of terror wash over her as she realized that she was surrounded, trapped in the abandoned wing of the school with nowhere to run. But just as she was about to succumb to despair, Sarah remembered something: the legend of Millwood High and the dark secret that lay buried beneath its walls. With a newfound sense of determination, she confronted the spirits, demanding to know the truth. To her surprise, the spirits stopped in their tracks, their hollow eyes locking onto hers as they listened to her words. And then, slowly but surely, they began to fade away, their ghostly forms dissipating into the darkness until there was nothing left but an eerie silence. With the spirits gone, Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her. But her curiosity was still burning, and she knew that she had to uncover the truth behind the legend of Millwood High once and for all. Armed with her determination, Sarah delved deeper into the history of the school, uncovering long-forgotten records and hidden secrets that shed light on the dark past of Millwood High. And what she discovered sent chills down her spine. It turned out that the school had indeed been built on the site of an old cemetery, but that was only part of the story. As Sarah dug deeper, she learned that the cemetery had been desecrated years ago, its graves robbed and its inhabitants forgotten by all but the restless spirits that still haunted the halls of Millwood High. But that was not the worst of it. As Sarah pored over old newspaper clippings and faded photographs, she uncovered a shocking truth. The school's principal, a man named Dr. Jonathan Pierce, had been responsible for the desecration of the cemetery all those years ago. Driven by greed and a thirst for power, Dr. Pierce had ordered the graves to be dug up and their contents removed, believing that he could harness the power of the restless spirits for his own twisted purposes. But in doing so, he had unleashed a dark force that had consumed him, turning him into a vengeful spirit doomed to wander the halls of Millwood High for all eternity. With the truth finally revealed, Sarah knew that she had to put an end to the haunting of Millwood High once and for all. Armed with the knowledge she had uncovered, she confronted Dr. Pierce's spirit, banishing him from the school and laying the restless spirits of the cemetery to rest. And as she watched the sun rise over the horizon, bathing the school in its warm light, Sarah knew that the darkness that had plagued Millwood High for so long had finally been lifted, and that the school could finally. The halls of Oak Ridge High School were eerily silent as Emily walked through them, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. She had just moved to town and was starting her first day at the school. Being the new girl was always daunting, but there was something about Oak Ridge High that sent shivers down her spine. As Emily made her way to her first class, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, but there was no one there. Brushing it off as nerves, she continued on her way. Her first class was history, and as she took her seat, she couldn't help but notice the strange looks she received from her classmates. They whispered amongst themselves, casting wary glances in her direction. Emily tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the lesson. But as the class went on, Emily began to feel increasingly uneasy. It was as if there was a presence in the room, something dark and malevolent lurking just out of sight. She stole glances around the classroom, but all she saw were the other students and the teacher, Mr. Thompson, at the front of the room. Suddenly, Emily felt a cold chill run down her spine, and she shivered involuntarily. The air around her seemed to grow heavier, suffocating. She looked up to see Mr. Thompson staring at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Is everything all right, Emily?" he asked, his voice dripping with concern. Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Why, yes, I'm fine," she stammered. But Mr. Thompson didn't seem convinced. He continued to watch her closely for the rest of the class, his gaze never wavering. Emily couldn't wait to get out of there, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the classroom. As soon as the bell rang, she grabbed her bag and practically ran from the room, desperate to put as much distance between herself and Mr. Thompson as possible. But no matter how fast she ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was following her, something dark and sinister. That evening, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her since her first day at Oak Ridge High. She tried to focus on her homework, but her mind kept drifting back to the strange events of the day. Finally, unable to concentrate any longer, she decided to do some research on the school. Pulling out her laptop, she began to search for information about Oak Ridge High and its history. What she found sent chills down her spine. According to legend, Oak Ridge High was built on the site of an old cemetery where the bodies of those who died during a plague were buried. The land was said to be cursed, haunted by the restless spirits of the dead. Over the years, there had been countless reports of strange happenings at the school. Students and teachers alike had reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in the hallways, hearing disembodied voices whispering their names in the darkness, and feeling icy cold drafts in rooms where there was no logical explanation for them. But the most chilling part of the legend was the story of Mr. Thompson. According to the legend, Mr. Thompson had been a teacher at Oak Ridge High many years ago. He had been a beloved member of the faculty, until one day he disappeared without a trace. Some said he had simply left town, unable to bear the weight of the school's dark history any longer. But others whispered that he had been consumed by the malevolent force that lurked within the school's walls, driven mad by its relentless presence. As Emily read through the accounts of the school's haunted history, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Could it be true? Was Oak Ridge High really haunted by the spirits of the dead? Determined to uncover the truth, Emily enlisted the help of her new friends, Sarah and Alex. Together, they hatched a plan to conduct a seance in the school, hoping to communicate with the restless spirits that haunted its halls. They waited until nightfall, sneaking into the school under the cover of darkness. The halls were silent and empty, the only sound the echo of their footsteps as they made their way to the old gymnasium. Once inside, they set up candles in a circle on the floor and joined hands, closing their eyes and focusing their energy on the task at hand. "Is there anyone here with us?" Emily whispered into the darkness. At first, there was no response. But then, ever so faintly, they heard the sound of footsteps echoing in the distance, growing louder and louder until it felt as if the very walls of the gym were shaking with the force of it. Suddenly, the candles flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Emily's heart raced as she felt a cold breeze brush against her skin, raising goosebumps on her arms. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice trembling. There was a moment of silence, and then a voice whispered from the darkness, "Icy and malevolent. We are the ones who dwell in the shadows," it said. "We are the ones who have been forgotten, cast aside by the living. But now, we have returned to claim what is rightfully ours." Emily's blood ran cold as she realized the true nature of the spirits they had summoned. They were not the lost souls of the dead, but something far more sinister, something that had been lurking in the darkness of Oak Ridge High for centuries. Before she could react, she felt a cold hand close around her throat, squeezing the life out of her. She struggled to break free, but it was no use. The darkness consumed her, swallowing her whole. When Sarah and Alex woke up the next morning, they found Emily's lifeless body lying on the floor of the gymnasium, her eyes staring blankly into the darkness. They screamed in horror, realizing too late the danger they had put themselves in by meddling with forces beyond their comprehension. Word of Emily's death spread quickly through the town, sending shockwaves through the community. The authorities launched an investigation, but despite their efforts, they were unable to uncover the truth behind her untimely demise. In the weeks that followed, Oak Ridge High was closed indefinitely as rumors swirled about the school's haunted past. Parents refused to send their children there, fearing for their safety in the wake of Emily's tragic death. But even as the town mourned the loss of one of its own, the darkness that lurked within the walls of Oak Ridge High remained, biding its time until it could claim its next victim. And so, the legend of Oak Ridge High lived on, a cautionary tale for those who dared to tread its hallowed halls, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed, lest they awaken forces beyond.